Okay, I think I'm last and I'm standing between you and ice cream, so I'm going to keep my remarks very short. I appreciate your patience. It's been a great day. I'm Dave Harris. I manage the energy and minerals section here at KGS. The members of my section are listed there on the screen, and I appreciate their efforts and their contributions to this work. Much of what I'm going to talk about, if not all of what I'm going to talk about, is their work, not mine. So I've got a great team that is the ones that are responsible for what I'll be talking about. I can't really talk about energy in Kentucky without stating the obvious, that the extractive mineral industries, the extractive resource industries in this state are in a real bind. In my 26 years, it's never been as bad as it is right now. Coal production continues to decline. We're every year we seem to see decreases in coal production, and we actually rank 5th now. We were 3rd for quite a long time, but in 2016, production was down low enough that we fell behind Pennsylvania and Illinois. So we're now the 5th largest coal producer in the country, behind Wyoming being the 1st, West Virginia, Pennsylvania. I certainly never thought that would happen in my career here, but it's the reality, and the reasons for that are a conversation for another time. But it's not only the coal industry. We're seeing the effects of, at the same time, low oil and gas prices. We've had low gas prices due to oversupply, the large shale gas boom for the last 6-7 years. And we're in the 3rd year of a depressed oil market, where oil prices have been below $50, and for quite a bit of that time, hovering around $29, $30. So those low oil and gas prices are starting, or not starting, but are continuing to affect drilling in Kentucky. And the oil and gas industry is really at historic record low permitting levels and drilling levels since we started permitting wells in 1960. You can see back in 2008, 2009, we had well over 2,000 permits issued each year, almost 2,500 permits. And last year we had 221 drilling permits issued. And this year to date, as of this week, we've had 53 permits issued. And if you average that out for the rest of the year, it'll end up, if we continue at that same pace, it'll end up being 120, 125 permits, which is just unbelievable. It's an unsustainable level of activity for this industry. And so that's the sort of climate right now for coal and oil and gas that we have to deal with. And I know this is not news to those of you who work directly in that industry or consult for companies in that industry. Despite those grim numbers, there are a few glimmers of hope, and one of those is this deep Cambrian Rogersville play in eastern Kentucky. We did have some new activity in the Rogersville, in the Rome Trough, and the Rogersville Shale. This is a deep Cambrian shale in far eastern Kentucky. We had a new well drilled in late 2016 in Lawrence County here by Bruin Exploration. Bruin stated in a public meeting that they were going to spend about $12 million on that well. And if it's successful, which we're still not sure if that's the case, they'll be spending another $1 million for a pipeline connection. So these are very expensive, very deep wells. This was a horizontal well. And so this is not the type of well that every operator in Kentucky is going to be able to drill. Just larger companies are the ones that are going to be active in this play. In addition to that well, in a previous well drilled in 15, but we just got the records released in 16, set the new state drilling depth record. So we have the deepest vertical well drilled in Kentucky is now in Lawrence County, 15,950 feet. And so despite this low price environment that we're seeing, there still is activity and interest in some of these deep plays that have the potential to produce high volumes of hydrocarbons like the Marcellus, like the Utica Shale in Ohio and in Pennsylvania. The jury's still out on this play. We don't know the economic success of these wells. We don't have any production data, so it's still too early to say, but there has been a little bit of activity. And certainly this play is what's been responsible for recently updated drilling regulations to deal with these high volume hydraulic fracture wells in eastern Kentucky. So coming with this new activity is also some concerns on the minds of the public. Energy issues I think are more prevalent and more a concern to the general public than they ever have been. These large unconventional shale plays where hydraulic fracturing is used, where horizontal drilling is used, are on the minds of the general public, and we're seeing a lot of concerns about things like siting pipelines in the state, fear of fracking and what effects that might have on people's properties, and certainly induced seismicity, either due to fracking or to wastewater injection. These are the sorts of issues that come with these new plays, with these high volume hydraulic fracturing. And this is the type of things that where we're trying to be a part of that conversation and provide fair and unbalanced geoscience information. And the main way we're doing that is by addressing development issues with research and information at KGS here. Things like fracking, which has potential to affect water supply, groundwater quality, issues like frac sand resources. Is there potential in Kentucky for mining frac sand? Certainly the induced seismicity issue. What are we going to do with produced brine or produced frac fluid? And then the controversies we've seen over pipeline siting. And so what KGS has been able to do is to weigh in with unbiased science. We've produced fact sheets and presented information at public meetings. No, we don't take a side in this argument. We just present the facts and put that out. These fact sheets are all available on our website if you are in need of that information. And something that we're just now starting to get into are the societal impacts. Things that are not strictly geoscience, but that geology plays a role in, things like air emissions, public health issues that we heard about this morning, workforce impacts, either plus or minus, traffic, roads. These are the problems and the issues that have come about in other areas where unconventional oil and gas drilling has taken off. And so we're trying to work with our colleagues in sociology and psychology and policy to head off these issues in Kentucky before they become problems. And we want to make sure that we use best practices and we learn from similar situations in Pennsylvania and Ohio and Texas and try to head off problems before they start here. We heard a lot about this morning, so I'm going to go pretty quickly through this. But again, why KGS? I think one of our biggest missions is to provide research value. You know, we talked about the data we deliver to the public at no cost, the online oil and gas data, coal quality, the various databases. You know, you've heard plenty about that already today. Merrill, our speaker from EQT, talked about these multi-sponsor research consortiums and how they fill a need for industry as well. And then also, we've been fairly successful attracting federal research dollars. So this is federal funding that we bring in to the university to address problems in Kentucky. And we've had good success. The water monitoring project that Chuck Taylor just talked about is one example. Our carbon storage work, we've had work with other federal grants on brine disposal and coal data, things like that. So a lot of value there in bringing federal dollars on the table to address problems. An example of one of these multi-sponsor projects, and Merrill talked about this morning, so I won't belabor the point, but this project had 8 company sponsors. They contributed between $20,000 and $25,000 each, and in return, they received a study with data and interpretations worth about $200,000 all told. So right off the bat, we can say that there's at least a 10-to-1 cost-benefit ratio in putting together these multi-sponsor research projects. That report was just recently released, so all this data gets released at some point. We can keep it confidential for a year or so, but it all becomes available to the public, so everybody benefits from these in the end. And like Doug Curl mentioned, we are exploring new ways to communicate this data in terms of story maps and other online vehicles. We are adapting to changing priorities. Nothing stays the same, and Dr. Capilouto, I think, mentioned at the fast pace of change. Certainly one example is our carbon storage research. If you were at this meeting 5 years ago, you may have heard 3 or 4 talks about carbon sequestration, carbon storage. This year, not so much. Well, what's happened? And that's really a change in priorities at the national level. We are winding down our funded research on that. We have a couple of small projects that we're finishing up. But the reality of carbon sequestration and carbon storage right now, it is very unlikely to be done at a commercial level without federal regulations or a carbon tax. And in the new administration, I think that either one of those are highly unlikely. But we are ready. Should that day ever come, we are ready. We've collected the data, we've done the research, we're prepared for that outcome if we're called on. Certainly the benefit of that work, even if commercial CO2 storage never happens, is that we've developed a very rich subsurface data set from the projects we've done and also new expertise within the survey. So we certainly have benefited, and the state has benefited in general from the wells and wells we've drilled and the projects we've done in the state. Mention a couple of research directions, new things that are going on, rare earth elements. We're taking a hard look at rare earth elements, which are in high demand and low supply, at least in the United States. We've got a project with UK Mining Engineering looking at the abundance and our capability to extract rare earth elements from coal. And this is a little schematic here about how rare earth elements actually get into coal, either from volcanic ash, from hydrothermal fluids, maybe some input from fluvial sediments. But basically they get concentrated in coal, and we're looking at coal and coal byproducts, things like ash and slurry, to see if we can recover rare earth elements in economic quantities. Also looking at rare earth elements in igneous intrusives and fluorite deposits in Western Kentucky. Warren Anderson is primarily responsible for that work. So some new activity there in rare earth elements. Also looking at deep helium resources. There's been evidence of helium in the western part of the Rome Trough. This is central Kentucky. Here's Fayette County right here. So this is Madison and Lincoln counties down in this area, Garrett County. There's wells drilled here, 3 or 4 wells that have had helium in concentrations of 1 to 2%. And while that sounds really low, that's actually economic grade helium. And if someone chose to invest the money to build a separation facility, a processing facility, that could turn into a commercial deposit. So we're going to look at actually try some novel ideas for looking at how extensive the helium might be. And the idea is to look at shallow groundwater in and around these deep helium accumulations to see if they contain anomalous dissolved helium. And so the groundwater may have traces of helium that will tell us more about the distribution in the deep subsurface. And then also, what are the source rocks? We still don't know exactly where the helium's coming from. We know it comes from uranium, thorium, radioactive decay of these elements, but the exact source interval is not known. So we've got a proposal in right now for some funding to do that work. We're hopeful that that will be funded in this summer sometime and get started in the fall. And then finally, Geo Microbiology, kind of a new area. Marty Paris and Junfeng Zhu are working on this. This is a new collaboration with Ohio State. And Chuck Taylor mentioned this. But based on the results of this groundwater monitoring study in Eastern Kentucky, where we saw a lot of dissolved biogenic methane in domestic water wells, we want to do more work on that to see where the methane is coming from, the microbial communities. So we're partnering with Ohio State, some microbiologists at Ohio State to do some additional sampling of these wells and identify sources of the microbial methane and also variations in the carbon isotopic composition of those communities. A couple of new research capabilities I thought I'd mention. We were starting to use a software package called MOVE. This is a very high-end structural modeling project. We're hoping to use this in the 3D mapping program that Drew Andrews mentioned. But this is a very nice sort of major industry quality software package that we have access to through an academic license. And so it does a lot of kinematic modeling, 2 and 3D, models and stress and fault analysis. So we're hoping to get a lot of value out of that package. And then also Trinity Genesis is a 1D and 3D basin modeling program that we're just starting to tap into as well. So some new software capabilities and some new hardware capabilities. Scanning electron microscope is a tremendous addition to our toolkit. This was an NSF equipment grant that Dave Mocher at the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences wrote, and we partnered with Earth and Environmental Sciences to acquire this instrument. So this will be a tremendous tool for our reservoir analysis, looking at fine-grained rocks, pore systems in reservoir intervals. And a portable gas chromatograph that Chuck Taylor and Marty Paris wrote a university equipment grant proposal for was successful. This is a field instrument that's able to analyze volatile organic compounds, hydrocarbons, various inorganic gases in the field, and it has broad application across campus. There's a number of groups that are going to benefit and use this instrument. We're looking forward to, this is on order and we haven't received it yet, but we're looking forward to learning that and starting to use that this summer. And that's it. So I can answer questions or we can go eat ice cream, up to you.